He brought his foster daughter to the gala. Her whisper destroyed his boss. The chandelier light caught in the folds of her silver gown as she stepped out of the car, her hand trembling just slightly in the crook of his arm. To anyone watching, they looked like a picture of elegance, a proud father escorting his beautiful daughter to a charity gala. But beneath the calm smiles, something darker flickered. Daniel Hayes had spent 20 years building a reputation in the corporate world, polished, calculated, respected. Tonight, as he entered the grand ballroom of the LeClaire Hotel, every handshake and nod masked the truth he didn't want to be there. Not because of the champagne, the orchestra, or the gossip, but because of the man waiting inside. Richard Kane, his boss, his mentor, his nightmare. The man who had once promised him the world and then, behind his back, taken it all. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Daniel murmured under his breath. His foster daughter, Emma, smiled faintly. She was only 20, but her poise could silence a room. "I've been ready since the night he ruined you," she whispered back. Daniel's chest tightened. He remembered that night vividly. The scandal, the leaked documents that weren't his doing, the demotion, the humiliation. It was Richard Kane who had orchestrated it, framing him to protect his own corruption. Daniel had lost everything. Everything except her. Emma had been 16 then, a foster child with nowhere to go, bruised by life and distrustful of everyone. Daniel had taken her in, given her a home, a chance. And in return, she had given him something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Now she was his only ally, and tonight she would be his reckoning. As they entered the ballroom, murmurs rippled. Emma's beauty turned heads, but Daniel noticed how her gaze fixed on one man, the man surrounded by admirers near the stage, laughing, a glass of wine in hand. Richard Kane looked like power personified. Immaculate suit, easy charm, and the arrogance of someone who believed he could never be touched. Daniel felt Emma's fingers tighten around his arm. "That's him," she whispered. "Yes," Daniel said quietly. "That's him." Hours passed in slow motion. Speeches, toasts, music. Daniel's mind raced as he watched Emma move through the crowd, engaging politely, her smile disarming, her words measured. She was too calm, like someone rehearsing a scene in a play she'd written herself. When she finally approached Richard, Daniel's breath caught. "Mr. Kane," she said sweetly, "it's an honor to meet you. I've heard so much." Richard turned, his practiced charm lighting up instantly. "The honor's mine, and you must be Hayes's daughter. I didn't know he had one so grown up." His eyes lingered too long, his tone dripping with something Daniel recognized all too well. Emma smiled, pretending not to notice. "He doesn't talk much about the past. Probably for good reason. Some of us have history." Her gaze sharpened. "Yes," she said softly, "and some histories never stay buried." Richard laughed, assuming flirtation, not threat. "You're a clever one, aren't you?" Daniel, standing across the room, felt a chill crawl up his spine. He couldn't hear the words, but he could read the tension in Richard's shoulders, the sudden flush rising to his face. "What are you talking about?" Richard managed, keeping his tone light. Emma's whisper was colder now, deliberate. "I was 16. You came to that party he hosted. You told me I was special. You remember, don't you?" Richard's color drained. "That's absurd. You don't have to deny it," she murmured. "I have proof." His jaw tightened. "You're bluffing." Her lips curved. "Am I?" "There are photos, messages, even the security footage from that night. I found everything when I hacked your private drive. It took time, but you made it easy. You never deleted anything properly, Mr. Kane." He set his drink down, hand trembling. "Listen to me. Whatever you think you... Tonight," she interrupted softly, "it all ends, unless you want the world to see what you really are." She turned away before he could answer, her heels clicking softly against the marble. Daniel watched Richard stagger, pale and sweating, muttering something to an assistant before rushing out toward the balcony. Moments later, Emma returned, expression unreadable. "What did you say to him?" Daniel whispered. "Only the truth, the kind that burns when it's finally spoken." He searched her face, seeing not the girl he'd once sheltered, but a woman forged from silence and scars. "Emma, what proof do you really have?" Her eyes flicked toward the ballroom doors, where flashes of phones and murmurs began to rise. Daniel's heart skipped. "You didn't!" She nodded once. "I did. Every major news outlet has it now. In 30 seconds, the entire city will know what he's done to you, to me, to everyone he's used." A hush fell over the crowd as someone shouted, "Turn on the screen!" The large projector behind the stage flickered to life, showing the company's promotional reel, then glitching, replaced by a series of emails, documents, photos. Gasps filled the air. Someone screamed. Richard Kane's face appeared next, mid-laugh, arm around a teenage girl, Emma, years ago. Daniel's blood ran cold. Emma stood still, watching chaos unfold, her expression serene. "He took my childhood," she whispered. "Now I've taken his empire." Daniel couldn't move. Around them, people rushed out, phones buzzing, reporters calling, security scrambling. The orchestra stopped playing mid-note. Emma turned to him slowly. "You wanted justice," she said softly. "Now you have it." He stared at her, torn between pride and horror. "Emma, what happens now?" She looked toward the balcony where Richard had vanished into the night. Her eyes darkened, unreadable. "Now," she said, "now he learns what it feels like to lose everything." The next sound was a shout from outside, then glass breaking, then silence. Emma didn't flinch. Daniel took a step toward the balcony, his heart pounding, and then the crowd surged toward the terrace doors, gasping, whispering, the glittering illusion of the gala dissolving into chaos. Daniel pushed through them, his pulse thundering in his ears. The air outside was cold and sharp, the kind that bit into the lungs. Richard Kane was slumped against the marble railing, his once immaculate tuxedo now creased and damp from spilled wine. His phone lay shattered nearby. He looked smaller somehow, deflated, as if the arrogance had drained out of him all at once. Daniel stopped a few feet away, chest heaving. For a moment, neither man spoke. The noise from the ballroom faded behind them. Only the wind and the distant hum of city traffic filled the silence. "You planned this," Richard rasped finally, eyes bloodshot and wild. "You and that girl. This is your revenge." Daniel's voice was low. "No. It was never about revenge. It was about the truth." Richard gave a bitter laugh. "Truth? You think the truth matters in our world? You think anyone will care once my lawyers—" He stopped mid-sentence, as his gaze darted past Daniel's shoulder. Emma stood in the doorway, the soft glow from the ballroom casting her in silver and gold. Her expression was unreadable, calm, almost pitying. "You destroyed people," she said quietly, stepping closer. "You ruined him. You used me. And for what? To feel powerful?" Richard's lips trembled. "You don't understand how things work. I built everything from nothing. You earned pain," Emma interrupted, her voice steady but her hands trembling. "You earned every moment that's coming for you." Daniel could see the fear creeping into Richard's eyes now, the realization that the fortress he'd built was crumbling, brick by brick, in front of everyone who'd ever admired him. The whispers inside had turned into shouts. Phones were ringing, cameras flashing. The world was already devouring him alive. But there was something else beneath Richard's fear, a flicker of defiance, something feral. He took a step toward Emma, his voice trembling. "You think this makes you a hero? You think anyone will believe you? I'll spin this. I'll make them see you as a liar, a manipulator. You're nothing but a— Enough! Daniel's voice cut through the air like a blade. Not another word. Richard froze, his mouth half open. The fury in Daniel's eyes silenced him completely. For the first time, Daniel looked like the man Richard had underestimated. Calm, powerful, dangerous in his quiet restraint. I spent years protecting your secrets. You took my loyalty and turned it into a weapon against me. You made me watch as my career, my reputation. Everything I built was dragged through the mud because you were afraid of being caught. But tonight, you're the one exposed. You're the one they'll whisper about in every boardroom, every paper, every home. Richard's voice cracked. You think they'll let you come back after this? You're done too. You'll be tainted by this. You brought her here. You made this spectacle happen. Daniel's expression didn't change. If it means the truth comes out, I can live with that. For a moment, Richard seemed to crumble, leaning back against the railing, eyes darting between them. Then his gaze fixed on Emma again, desperate, searching for weakness. You think you're free now. You'll never be free of this. Once the world knows what happened, they'll look at you with pity. They'll make you relive it over and over. You'll wish you'd stayed silent. Emma didn't look away. I already lived in silence, she said softly. I'm done with that. Her words hit him like a slap. Richard's lips parted, but no sound came. His hand trembled on the railing, gripping it like a man holding on to the last thread of his empire. Then, without warning, he turned, stumbling toward the edge. Daniel lunged forward instinctively, grabbing his arm. "Don't!" Daniel shouted. For a heartbeat, their eyes met. The ruined Titan and the man he'd betrayed. Something passed between them. Guilt, rage, exhaustion. Richard's breath hitched. His eyes darted toward the ballroom, where cameras were flashing like lightning. He whispered, "It's over anyway," and tried to pull away. Daniel tightened his grip. "Don't make her watch this." Emma's voice broke through the cold night air, quiet but steady. "Let him go." Both men turned toward her. Her face was pale but resolved, her eyes glistening. She said, "He doesn't deserve your mercy. He never did." Daniel hesitated. Richard wrenched free, stumbling back, hands shaking as he backed toward the railing again. "You'll regret this," he muttered. "You both will." He turned sharply, disappearing into the shadows of the terrace's far end. Daniel didn't follow this time. He stood still, breathing hard, his heart pounding against his ribs. Emma walked to his side. They watched the city lights shimmering below, cold and distant, like stars that refused to warm the earth. The music inside had stopped completely now. The gala had turned into an uproar of reporters, guests, and chaos. Daniel exhaled slowly. He murmured, "He's finished." Emma nodded. "So are we, maybe." He looked at her. "You did what you had to do." Her lips trembled, though she kept her composure. "It doesn't feel like victory." "Because it's not," Daniel said quietly. "It's survival." A gust of wind swept across the terrace, carrying the faint sounds of police sirens in the distance. Emma shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. Daniel took off his jacket and placed it over her shoulders the way he used to when she was younger. He said, "Let's go home." But Emma didn't move. Her gaze drifted toward the far corner of the terrace where Richard had vanished. "Do you think he'll try to run?" Daniel didn't answer right away. The sirens grew louder. "He can try, but there's nowhere left to run." They turned to leave, re-entering the chaos of the ballroom. Phones flashed in their faces, voices shouted questions, but Daniel shielded her with his arm, pushing through until they reached the exit. Outside, the night was darker than before, heavy with the scent of rain. A single drop hit Emma's hand, then another, She looked up at the sky, and for the first time that night, she let herself breathe. Behind them, through the tall glass doors, the world of wealth and lies burned under the harsh light of truth. Neither of them noticed the lone figure slipping through the service exit on the far side of the terrace, his face hidden beneath the shadow of a cap, his steps uneven but determined. The rain began to fall harder, soaking the marble steps as Daniel guided Emma toward the waiting car. The driver hesitated before opening the door, eyes flicking nervously toward the commotion behind them. Reporters had already gathered like vultures, their umbrellas clustered, their voices overlapping in a frenzy of questions. Cameras flashed, blinding in the dark. "Mr. Hayes, is it true your daughter exposed Richard Kane's crimes? Emma, how long were you planning this? Do you have a comment about the leak footage?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "No comment," he said sharply, ushering Emma inside. The door slammed shut, muting the chaos. For a moment, there was silence, except for the rain drumming against the roof. Emma sat motionless, staring out the window. The reflections of the flashing lights blurred, streaked by water, turning the night into a kaleidoscope of color. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles white. "You did what you came to do," Daniel said softly, watching her. "It's over." She turned her head slightly, her voice barely a whisper. "Over? Do you think people forget something like this?" He hesitated. "They'll move on. News cycles always do." She smiled faintly, but it wasn't a happy smile. "They'll move on, yes, but not me. Every time someone looks at me, they'll see that footage, that whisper. They'll see what he did." He didn't know what to say. He'd told himself for years that justice would heal him, that exposing the truth would be enough. But seeing her now, tired, hollowed-eyed, trembling, it hit him that justice didn't erase pain. It only made it visible. "Emma," he began gently, "you did what you came to do. You faced him when most people would have run." She looked at him finally, her eyes glistening. "You think I'm brave?" she asked quietly. "I don't feel brave. I feel empty." He reached out, taking her hand. "You're not alone anymore." The car turned down a side street, leaving the noise behind. The rain softened. The city lights dimmed. For a few precious moments, it felt like the world was holding its breath. But somewhere far behind them, in the maze of alleys near the hotel, another story was unfolding. Richard Kane stumbled through the shadows, drenched and shivering, his mind spinning in chaotic fragments. His phone was gone, his car surrounded by press. He had no plan, no control. For the first time in his life, he was truly powerless. He ducked into a narrow alley and leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. The taste of rain mixed with bitterness in his mouth. His empire, his carefully built illusion, was collapsing minute by minute. He could almost hear the stock prices crashing, the board members panicking, the police on their way. "Emma," he muttered under his breath, the name twisting into a curse. He'd underestimated her. He thought she was just a pawn, a damaged girl desperate for validation, but she had turned out to be the perfect weapon. Daniel had taught her well. Too well. His thoughts grew darker as he stumbled onward. He needed an escape, a way to twist the story, to survive. That was what he'd always done, survive. He spotted a payphone near a shuttered convenience store, its flickering light casting a pale halo on the wet pavement. He pulled a few crumpled bills from his pocket, his fingers shaking as he dialed a number he'd hoped never to use again. "Thorne," he whispered when the voice answered. "It's Kane. I need help." The voice on the other end was calm, cold. "You've made quite a mess. It's all over the feeds." "I can fix it," Richard insisted. "I just need to get out, tonight. There's money offshore. You'll be compensated." A pause. Then, "Stay where you are. I'll send a car." The line went dead. Richard lowered the receiver slowly, his reflection distorted in the rain-slick glass of the phone booth. For the first time, he felt the weight of everything he'd done pressing down on him. Inside the car, miles away, Emma's phone vibrated. She ignored it at first, but when it buzzed again, Daniel glanced over. "You should check that," he said quietly. She unlocked the screen. A message from an unknown number. Just one sentence. "You don't think it ends like this, do you?" Her stomach dropped. She showed it to Daniel. His expression hardened instantly. "Where did that come from?" he asked. "No idea," she said. "There's no name, no trace." He took the phone, scanning the message. "Could be someone from the media trying to provoke you." "Or him," she whispered. Daniel's eyes met hers in the dim light. "He's not walking away from this. Even if he runs, the evidence is everywhere." Emma didn't answer. Something in her gut told her Richard wasn't the kind of man to vanish quietly. The car turned onto their street. The house stood dark, waiting. Familiar, safe. But when they stepped inside, the silence felt too still, too heavy. Daniel locked the door, his instincts buzzing. "I'll make some tea," he said, trying to steady the moment. Emma nodded, slipping off her shoes. She wandered into the living room, staring at the old family photos on the wall. Snapshots from simpler days. The day Daniel had first brought her home, the smile she had forced for the camera, the way he'd stood behind her, proud and hopeful. Now, everything felt like it belonged to someone else. She turned toward the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. Her reflection looked older somehow, sharper. The girl she used to be was gone. Then she saw it. Movement. A shadow across the street, barely visible through the drizzle. Someone standing under the streetlight, unmoving, watching. Her breath caught. "Daniel?" she called quietly. He appeared in the doorway holding 2 cups. "What is it?" She pointed. "There's someone outside." He set the cups down and walked over. The figure was still there, just beyond the edge of the light. Then, as if sensing they were being watched, it turned and disappeared into the darkness. Daniel frowned. "Probably a reporter." Emma shook her head. "No, that wasn't a reporter." He looked at her, the muscle in his jaw tightening. "Go upstairs," he said calmly. "Now." "But—" "Go." She obeyed, her pulse racing as she climbed the stairs. She didn't turn on the light. From her window she could see the street again. Empty now. Rain falling harder, the sound like static on glass. Downstairs, Daniel checked the locks again, then peered through the front curtains. Nothing. But unease gnawed at him, deep and primal. He picked up his phone, ready to call the police, and then froze as headlights flashed across the window. A car. Black, unmarked, pulling up slowly in front of the house. The engine idled, low and steady, and the rain kept falling. Daniel's pulse quickened as the car idled outside, engine purring like something alive, patient, waiting. The rain washed over the windshield, blurring the outline of whoever sat inside. He killed the lights in the living room, moving silently toward the window, his breath fogging the glass. The driver's silhouette was motionless. Another figure sat in the back, broad-shouldered, still. He didn't recognize the car. No plates visible from this angle. Upstairs, he heard the faint creak of Emma's footsteps. He gestured upward, instinctively, though she couldn't see him. "Stay put. Don't move." The car door opened. A man stepped out, umbrella snapping open against the downpour. His coat was long, dark, expensive-looking, the kind of thing corporate elites wore to hide behind. He started walking toward the house, slow, deliberate steps splashing through the puddles. Daniel's fingers tightened around the curtain. He could call the police, but something about this felt beyond them. Precise, controlled. The man stopped at the gate and looked directly at the house. Even from this distance, he could feel the weight of that gaze.
Then, as if with eerie calm, the stranger raised a hand and pressed something against the gate. An envelope. He left it there, turned, walked back to the car. The taillights flared red as the vehicle reversed into the fog, disappearing down the empty street as silently as it had arrived. Daniel waited. 10 seconds. 20. Then he opened the door. The rain was colder now, biting through his shirt as he crossed the front path. The envelope was waterproofed, sealed tight. His name was printed across it in clean block letters. No sender, no mark. Inside, Emma stood halfway down the stairs, her face pale. "What was that?" he said, holding up the envelope. She descended slowly, watching him slit it open with a trembling hand. Inside was a single sheet of heavy paper. Typed. Precise. "There are things you don't know about what happened that night. Meet me tomorrow, 9 p.m., Pier 7. Come alone. If you bring the girl, you'll never see the rest."
Daniel stared at it, heart pounding. The rain seemed to grow louder, the world narrowing to that single piece of paper. Emma's voice broke the silence. "Pier 7? That's the shipping yard." He nodded slowly, reading the message again. Someone wants to talk. Someone who knows more than we do. Her eyes darkened. "It's a trap." "Probably, but whoever this is, they know something. Maybe about him. Maybe about what's next." "Daniel, you can't go," she said firmly. "You saw what happened tonight. He has people, powerful people. This could be one of them trying to clean up the mess." He folded the letter and slipped it into his pocket. "If there's more at stake, I need to know." Emma's voice softened, pleading. "You don't owe anyone anything anymore." But Daniel wasn't listening. The part of him that had spent years swallowing humiliation, waiting for answers, refusing to break, that part was wide awake again. He turned off the hall light, his reflection faint in the window pane. Outside, the rain had become a sheet of silver, washing the night clean, or trying to. Upstairs, Emma sat on the edge of her bed, unable to shake the image of that car, the way it moved, the way it waited. Something about it was too familiar. She pulled out her laptop and began typing furiously, tracing security feeds from the area around the Gala, looking for a match. Her training, years of coding, network analysis, digital forensics, was her weapon, the one thing she could control. She found a clip within minutes, a black sedan matching the same description, leaving the hotel's underground lot 15 minutes after the chaos began. No license plate visible, but the timestamp matched perfectly. Her heart sank as she zoomed in on a still frame of the driver's face, blurred, but not enough to hide the outline of a scar along the jaw. She knew that scar. Richard Kane's bodyguard, Victor Thorne. She shut the laptop, pulse racing. Downstairs, Daniel poured himself a glass of water, though his hands trembled too much to lift it. His mind replayed every moment of the evening, the whisper, the revelation, the terror in Richard's eyes. Could he still be alive? Could he have staged everything? The phone buzzed again, another unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A man's voice, distorted, calm. "You shouldn't have ignored me, Hayes." Daniel froze. "Who is this?" "You'll find out soon enough. Just remember, you brought her into this. You made her a target." The line went dead. He gripped the counter, breathing hard. Upstairs, he heard a faint creak. Emma appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. "It's him," she said, voice shaking. "The car. It's his man. I traced it. He's alive." Daniel's blood went cold. "That's not possible." "I saw the footage," she whispered. "He must have escaped before the police arrived." Before he could respond, a sharp crack split the air. Glass shattered. The window near the stairs exploded inward. "Down!" Daniel shouted, grabbing her arm and pulling her behind the couch. The rain mixed with shards of glass scattered across the floor. A second shot echoed, splintering the doorframe. Emma's breathing came fast, shallow. Daniel crawled toward the side table, pulled open the drawer, and retrieved the small handgun he hadn't used in years. He checked the magazine. Full. "Stay low," he said, voice steady despite the adrenaline roaring in his veins. Another shot. This one hit the lamp, plunging the room into near darkness. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the outline of a figure at the end of the street. Tall, unmoving, rifle raised. "Basement," Daniel hissed. They scrambled toward the hallway, glass crunching underfoot. Emma slipped once, catching herself on the railing. The old wooden door to the basement creaked as Daniel yanked it open. They descended into the cold darkness, the sound of the storm muffled above them. Daniel flicked on a small light bulb that cast a weak yellow glow across the room. The basement was cramped. Old boxes, tools, dust-covered memories. Emma leaned against the wall, shaking. "What do we do?" He took a deep breath. "We wait. He's trying to scare us, flush us out. If you wanted us dead, we'd already be gone." "But he's here," she whispered. "He found us." Daniel looked toward the narrow window near the ceiling. Rain streaked the glass, shadows moving beyond it. "He wants me at that pier," Daniel murmured. This was a warning. Emma stepped closer, her voice breaking. "You can't go, please. If you walk into that meeting, he'll finish what he started." He looked at her, this girl he had raised, who had become his strength and his weakness. "I won't let him hurt you again," he said quietly. She shook her head. "And I won't let you go alone."
Above them, another sound cut through the storm. A door creaking open. Not the front, the back. Daniel's eyes widened. He reached for the light switch, plunging them into darkness. They stood frozen. The only sound, the rhythm of the rain, and the slow, deliberate footsteps overhead. Each step above them was measured, deliberate, the kind of pace that came from confidence, not hesitation. Daniel held his breath and motioned for Emma to stay behind him. The faint light from the street filtered through the small basement window, slicing the darkness into trembling bands of gray. Dust hung in the air like static. The footsteps stopped directly above them. The house creaked with the weight of someone moving slowly, scanning, listening. Then a soft scrape, the unmistakable sound of a weapon's metal brushing wood. Daniel's heart pounded hard enough to feel it in his throat. He tightened his grip on the gun. One bullet in the wrong direction, and everything would end here, in this damp cellar. Emma's fingers brushed his sleeve. He turned slightly. She mouthed something. "There's another way out." He frowned, confused. She pointed toward the far corner, where an old storage cabinet stood against the wall. Behind it, hidden beneath years of dust and cobwebs, was a narrow door half swallowed by the foundation stones. Daniel had almost forgotten it existed. It led to the storm tunnel that ran beneath the property, an escape route from another life, another time. The sound of movement upstairs grew louder. Whoever was up there was heading toward the basement door. Daniel leaned close to Emma's ear, his whisper barely audible. "Go, now." She hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll follow. Just move." She crouched low, quietly pushing aside boxes as she crept toward the cabinet. Every breath felt like a countdown. The stairs above groaned. A footstep. Another. Then a pause, followed by the slow turn of the basement door handle. Daniel raised the gun, his eyes locked on the dark space where the staircase met the shadows. The door creaked open. For a moment, nothing happened, only the whisper of rain outside. Then a beam of light cut through the black, a flashlight sweeping across the room. "Hayes," a voice called, calm, smooth, almost mocking. "You've been busy tonight." Daniel didn't move. The light shifted again, closer to the stairs. "I have something you want, something you lost." Emma froze mid-step, her body rigid. The voice was familiar, low, controlled, but the tone unmistakable. Richard Kane. Daniel's pulse spiked. He'd heard that voice for years in boardrooms and interviews, but never like this, stripped of pretense, colder, more dangerous. "You're supposed to be dead," Daniel said, his voice steady though his hands weren't. Richard laughed softly. "Death is just another lie, Daniel, like loyalty, like family." Emma moved the cabinet inch by inch, every sound amplified in the silence. Daniel kept his eyes on the stairs, the gun steady, buying her every second he could.
Richard descended one step, then another, the flashlight bouncing against the concrete walls. His reflection flickered briefly in a shard of broken mirror leaning against a box. His hair slicked with rain, face drawn, eyes like obsidian.
"You ruined yourself tonight," Richard said. "You think you exposed me? The world will forget in a week. But you, your name, your foster child, they'll remember her, the girl who whispered, the girl who destroyed her own father's life." "Enough," Daniel snapped. But Richard kept coming, step by step, his voice weaving through the dark like smoke. "She's not your daughter, Daniel. She never was. And you think she did this for you? No. She did it for herself. She used you like you used her." Emma's grip faltered on the cabinet handle. The words cut deep, but she didn't stop. She pulled the hidden door open, the hinges whining softly. Cold air swept into the room from the tunnel beyond. Richard paused halfway down the stairs, his flashlight sweeping again. It caught the briefest glint of movement near the far wall. "Emma," he said, his tone shifting to something that sounded almost gentle. "You've grown, but you still don't understand how the world works. There's no justice, only control. And tonight, I still have it." "Don't listen to him," Daniel whispered. Richard took another step. "You want to know something about your dear foster father, Emma? Ask him who really leaked those files 5 years ago. Ask him who gave you my name when I needed a distraction from the investigation." Emma froze completely. Her head turned toward Daniel. "What is he talking about?" "He's lying," Richard chuckled. "Am I? Tell her the truth, Daniel. You didn't just take her in out of kindness. You took her because you owed me a debt, because you wanted to erase what you'd done." "Stop," Daniel said sharply. But Richard's voice grew stronger, echoing off the stone. "I had leverage on you, and you thought you could undo it by parading her around as your daughter. You built your redemption out of a child's pain. You always were sentimental." Emma's face crumbled. "Daniel?" He lowered the gun slightly. "It's not how it sounds. I never—" Richard stepped off the last stair, smiling faintly in the dim light. "He gave you to me, Emma. For one night. He didn't know what I'd do, but he knew enough. That's why he hates me. Because deep down, he knows he started it." "That's not true." But Emma had already backed away, trembling. Her eyes were glassy, her breath shallow. "Tell me it's not true," she whispered. He opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. The silence stretched too long. Then the flashlight beam shifted. Daniel reacted on instinct. He fired once. The shot cracked through the basement, deafening in the confined space. The bullet hit the wall inches from Richard's head, dust exploding from the concrete. Richard laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. "You always miss the first shot." He lunged forward, the flashlight falling, plunging them into near darkness. The two men collided, crashing into the boxes, the gun skittering across the floor. Emma screamed, running to the corner as the sound of fists and grunts filled the room. Daniel landed a punch that sent Richard sprawling into the wall, but the older man recovered fast, slamming Daniel back with surprising strength. The gun lay between them, gleaming faintly in the flickering light. Both reached for it at once. Emma didn't think. She dove forward, grabbing the gun first. Her hands shook violently as she pointed it at both of them, tears streaming down her face. "Stop!" she screamed. The men froze, breathing hard, faces inches apart. "Emma," Daniel said carefully, "put it down, please." "Is it true?" she whispered, voice breaking. "Tell me the truth before I decide who deserves to walk out of here." Richard smirked, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. "Go ahead, sweetheart. He's had this coming for years." Daniel looked at her, eyes full of something raw and broken. "I made mistakes, but I never gave you to him. I swear to you. He's twisting everything." The gun trembled in her grip. Her finger hovered over the trigger. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, shaking the old house. Richard took a slow breath, his tone turning cold again. "If you kill him, you'll finally be free." Emma's hand shook harder. Her pulse roared in her ears. Then another sound broke through the rain. A second car, pulling up outside, doors slamming, footsteps on gravel, voices shouting her name. Blue and red lights slashed through the rain-streaked windows, flashing across the dusty basement walls. The echo of shouted commands drifted down from above. Law enforcement, maybe the FBI. Daniel's contacts must have finally traced his signal, or perhaps one of the journalists at the gala had followed the trail of chaos that had erupted after the files leaked. Emma's finger trembled on the trigger as the sound of boots thundered over the floorboards. Richard's eyes darted toward the hidden door, then back to her, calculating, always 2 steps ahead. He knew the storm outside wasn't just weather. It was the sound of his empire collapsing. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low, measured. "You walk out there, and you're just another frightened girl holding a gun. They'll never believe you. But if you come with me—" "Don't you dare," Daniel interrupted, his voice rough and desperate. "Emma, look at me." She didn't move. The words, the tension, the darkness, they swirled in her mind like smoke. She could barely hear the storm or the men shouting outside anymore. All she could hear were their voices. One lying, one maybe telling the truth, maybe both lying. Daniel took a cautious step forward, his palms open, eyes locked on hers. "You don't owe either of us your fear. You have the power now. Don't let him twist it again." Richard's lips curled into a half smile. That's rich, coming from a man who built his career on deception. "Don't forget, I made you. Everything you have, your position, your prestige, your money, all came from me." Daniel's face hardened. "And everything you made will burn tonight." Before Richard could respond, the basement door upstairs burst open with a splintering crack. "FBI, drop your weapons." The shouting jolted Emma. Her eyes flickered toward the stairs. That fraction of a second was enough. Richard lunged. Daniel reacted instantly, throwing himself in front of her. The gun went off, a deafening explosion in the confined room. Emma stumbled backward, disoriented, the smell of gunpowder thick in the air. Richard fell to his knees, clutching his shoulder, a strangled cry escaping his lips. Daniel stood between them, his own breathing ragged, his shirt spattered with blood. Not his own. Agents flooded in the room, guns raised, flashlights cutting through the gloom. "Drop it! Drop the weapon!" Emma froze, still holding the gun. Her chest heaved as she stared at the 2 men. The one who had raised her and the one who had destroyed them both. Daniel turned toward her, his voice steady but faint. "It's over, Emma. Give it to them." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she lowered the gun, her hand trembling as it slipped from her grasp and clattered onto the floor. Daniel approached her slowly, his expression unreadable. "I know you don't trust me right now," he said quietly, "but I swear to you, whatever he told you, it's not the whole story." She lifted her eyes to him, tears spilling freely now. "Then tell me the whole story, Daniel. No more half-truths." He hesitated, the weight of years pressing against his chest. "When you came into my life, you were in danger. Not because of me, because of him. I was part of his operations once. I helped him launder money through our company's charity projects. It was supposed to be harmless. Numbers, transfers, reports. Then one day, I found out he was using the foundation to traffic children overseas." Emma flinched, the words slicing through the fragile quiet. "I tried to stop it, but I was too late. You were one of the names on the list, a foster child from a shelter he targeted. I couldn't save the others, but I could save you. That's why I took you. I didn't buy you. I stole you from his system and made sure he couldn't find you again." She shook her head slowly, her face pale. "And you never told me?" "If I had, he'd have come for you sooner. I thought I could protect you by keeping the truth buried. I thought I could make it right by giving you a normal life." Emma's lips parted, but no sound came out. The truth was like ice, creeping up her spine, numbing her completely. Footsteps sounded on the stairs again. An agent appeared, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Hayes will need you upstairs for questioning, both of you." Daniel nodded,
then looked back at Emma. "I'll tell them everything. No more lies." As they ascended the stairs, the flashing lights from outside bathed them in alternating blue and red. Reporters had already gathered beyond the barricade, their cameras cutting through the night, hungry for the story: the fall of a corporate titan, the arrest of a billionaire, the whisper that shattered an empire. But inside the house, the story was quieter. Two people walking through the wreckage of a past neither of them fully understood. At the threshold, Emma paused. Rain streaked across her face, mixing with tears. "What happens now?" she asked. Daniel looked out into the chaos of flashing lights, sirens, and shouting voices. "Now," he said softly, "the truth finally gets its turn." The agents led Richard into a waiting car. He turned his head just enough to meet Emma's eyes through the window. For a brief, haunting moment, his lips curled into a smile, not of defeat, but of promise. She shivered, wrapping her arms around herself as the rain soaked through her dress. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't finished. The empire might be collapsing, but Richard Kane had never been the kind of man to fall quietly. And as the door of the police car slammed shut, a single thought flickered through her mind, one she daren't speak out loud. What if everything Daniel said was only half the truth? What if the real story hadn't even begun? The convoy of police cars rolled away, their sirens fading into the distance. The night seemed to exhale at last, leaving only the sound of rain tapping against the broken windows of the old mansion. Emma stood at the edge of the driveway, the mud soft beneath her heels, her breath clouding in the cold air. The flashing lights were gone, but their ghostly colors still pulsed behind her eyes, blue, red, like a warning she didn't know how to ignore. Daniel emerged from the house behind her, his jacket soaked, his face drawn and pale. He'd been questioned for what felt like hours, and though the agents had treated him like an ally, Emma could see the weight pressing on him. Guilt had a way of changing a person's posture, shoulders hunched, head lowered, as if the truth itself were too heavy to carry. "Let's get out of here," he said softly, stepping up beside her. Emma didn't move. "They said we can't leave town." "I know. I just meant, let's get away from this place." His voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time that night, he sounded like a man completely lost.
The rain began to fall harder, washing the blood and dirt from the stone steps. Emma finally turned toward him, her eyes hollow, unreadable. "You said you wanted to tell me everything. Start now. Don't stop until there's nothing left." Daniel hesitated, glancing at the mansion, the broken windows, the flickering police tape, the outline of a life that had once seemed untouchable. He took a slow breath. "We can't talk here. There's a diner about a mile down the road, open all night. They'll be gone by now." They walked in silence, the night stretching endlessly around them. The air smelled of wet asphalt and burnt rubber. When they reached the diner, the neon sign flickered weakly, Maggie's 24/7 breakfast, half the letters burned out. It was nearly empty inside, just an old jukebox humming faintly in the corner, and a waitress wiping down the counter. They slid into a booth at the back. Daniel didn't order, neither did Emma. She just sat there, waiting. He rubbed his face, his fingers trembling slightly. "I told you I worked with Richard. That part's true. But I didn't tell you why." Her eyes narrowed. "Because you were greedy?" "Because I was desperate," he said quietly. "Back then, I wasn't the man you know. I was drowning in debt, my father's medical bills, my own failures. Richard found me, offered me a way out, quick money, promotions, a clean record. All I had to do was keep quiet while he built his empire." Emma stared at him, unblinking. "You knew what he was doing." "Not at first," Daniel said. It started with small things. Shell companies, false donations. I told myself it was harmless. Until the first investigation hit. I found a file in his office labeled Orchid Program. I opened it, and I saw names. Hundreds of them. Children. Every one of them part of a foster initiative, and all of them disappearing from the system. Emma's hands tightened on the edge of the table. I tried to confront him. He laughed, told me I was too late, that the shipments had already left. He said if I ever spoke, he'd bury me under the same dirt he buried those children in. And then he showed me your photo. Her throat tightened. Why me? He said you were special, that you'd caught the attention of someone powerful. He was going to sell you. I couldn't let that happen. So you took me. Yes, Daniel's voice broke. I ran that night, changed my name, forged the adoption. He thought I'd gone rogue for money, but I took you because I couldn't stand by anymore. Emma looked away, blinking rapidly as tears mixed with anger. You made me live a lie. I made you live, he said quietly. For a moment, neither spoke. The jukebox clicked, switching songs. A slow jazz tune, hauntingly soft against the rain outside. Then Emma whispered, "And the files I leaked? They came from you, didn't they?" Daniel nodded. I'd been collecting evidence for years. Every transaction, every offshore account, every child's name. I couldn't go to the police. He owned too many of them. So when you said you wanted to help with my charity work, I saw a way to finally expose him. You were the only person I could trust. Her lips parted slightly, realization dawning. You knew I'd find them. I hoped you would. You were brave enough to do what I couldn't. When you whispered to his boss at the gala, you didn't just ruin him. You freed everyone still trapped in his system. The words hung between them, heavy and fragile.
Outside, a car door slammed. Emma flinched. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the window, his instincts kicking in. A dark sedan had pulled into the lot. No sirens, no lights. Just 3 men in suits stepping out, their movements too controlled to be casual. Daniel's pulse quickened. We need to go. Now. Emma's voice trembled. Who are they? He didn't answer. He slid out of the booth, scanning for exits. The back door, near the kitchen, the only option. The waitress, sensing the tension, froze mid-step. Everything all right, hon? Daniel forced a smile. Just a misunderstanding. We're leaving. As they moved toward the kitchen, the bell above the diner door jingled. The men entered, tall, sharp-eyed, each wearing the same expressionless calm. One of them reached into his coat. Emma, run, he hissed. They bolted through the swinging doors into the kitchen. Pots clattered. A cook shouted in confusion, and then the back door slammed open to the rain-soaked alley. Gunfire shattered the windows. Bullets tore through the air, glass raining onto the tiled floor. Emma ducked behind a dumpster, gasping for breath. Daniel crouched beside her, pulling a small flash drive from his pocket, the last piece of evidence. They're not cops, he said. They're his cleanup crew. Richard planned for this. But he's in custody, she cried. Daniel shook his head. You don't understand. He doesn't need to be free to finish what he started. He still has people everywhere. The sound of footsteps echoed closer. One of the men shouted, You can't run forever, Hayes! Daniel glanced to Emma, his eyes fierce despite the fear. You can't let them get this drive. If they do, everything dies with it. Every name, every child. You have to trust me one more time. I don't know if I can, she whispered. Then trust what you've seen, he said, pressing the flash drive into her hand. Run toward the light, Emma. Always toward the light. She looked at him, rain streaking down her face, the weight of 1,000 questions in her eyes. What about you? He smiled faintly, eyes full of resignation. Someone has to buy you time. Before she could respond, he pushed her toward the alley's end just as the men rounded the corner.
guns raised. The rain came down harder, a curtain of silver that blurred the streetlights and muffled the sound of approaching footsteps. Emma stumbled into the darkness, clutching the flash drive so tightly it cut into her palm. The narrow alley twisted behind the diner, spilling into a maze of back streets and trash bins. Her lungs burned, each breath sharp and desperate, but she didn't stop. Daniel's last words echoed in her head, "Run toward the light." Behind her, the gunfire resumed, a shout, the metallic clang of something heavy hitting the ground. Then silence. Terrifying, empty silence. She wanted to turn back, to see if he was still alive, but the rational part of her, the one that Daniel had taught her to survive, screamed, "Keep moving." So she did, through puddles, past flickering lamps, until the alley opened into a deserted service road. A car was parked at the edge of the lot. A black sedan with its engine running, lights dimmed. For a second, panic gripped her. It could be them. But then a door opened and a woman stepped out. Mid-30s, soaked through, her ID badge half visible beneath her coat. "Emma Hayes?" she called, her voice firm but calm. "FBI, Agent Marlowe. You need to come with me now." Emma froze. The name meant nothing, but the tone, clipped, authoritative, rehearsed, felt real. Still, she didn't move closer. "How do I know you're not one of them?" Marlowe raised her hands, palms up. "Because if I were, you'd already be dead. We intercepted chatter 20 minutes ago. Kane's people are moving fast. We have to get you somewhere safe before they find you." "Daniel." "He's buying us time," Marlowe said, her voice softening. "Let's not waste it." Emma hesitated only a second longer before running to the car. The interior smelled faintly of coffee and gun oil. Marlowe slammed the door, pulled onto the road, and accelerated into the night. Rain streaked the windshield as city lights blurred past. Emma sat rigid, fingers still clenched around the flash drive. "What's on it?" Marlowe asked without looking at her.
"Proof," Emma said quietly. "Everything Richard Kane tried to hide. Then we'll get it to Quantico. Our cyber division can decrypt it safely." Emma turned to study her. "How long have you been following him?" "Too long," Marlowe murmured. "He's been a ghost for years. Money laundering, arms trading, human trafficking, all under the guise of philanthropy. Every time we got close, someone leaked intel. Someone high up." Emma's chest tightened. "You think there's a mole?" "I don't think. I know." The car took a sharp turn onto an empty stretch of highway. Marlowe checked her mirrors. "You need to understand something, Emma. What you did tonight, leaking those files, exposing him, that didn't end it. It started it. You just cut off the head of a hydra. The body's still moving." Emma looked down at the flash drive, her reflection faint in its metallic surface. "Daniel said this would end everything." Marlowe's jaw tightened. "Maybe it will, but not if Kane's network gets to you first." For a moment, the only sound was the rhythmic swish of the wipers. Then a soft buzz filled the car. Marlowe's radio. "This is Control. Agent Marlowe, status update." Marlowe said, "Package secured. En route to Safe House 47. Static hissed. Then the voice returned, tense. "Abort. Routes compromised. Repeat, Safe House 47 is burned." Marlowe's hands clenched on the wheel. "What the hell do you mean burned?" "Internal breach. Don't trust anyone. Kane's people have access to clearance files. Go dark immediately." The radio went dead. Marlowe swore under her breath and slammed the steering wheel. They're inside already. Emma's pulse spiked. "What do we do?" Marlowe reached under her seat, pulling out a small black pouch. Inside was a burner phone, a new SIM card, and a fake ID. She handed them to Emma. "Name's Clara Vaughn now. If anything happens to me, you find a reporter named Rena Vale at the Daily Spectrum. She's the only one I trust to release what's on that drive." The car sped through the rain, headlights slicing through the fog. Emma's mind spun. The new name, the reporter, the idea that nothing around her could be trusted. Then Marlowe's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Her voice dropped. "We're being followed." Emma twisted around. 2 black SUVs, headlights dimmed, gaining fast.
Marlowe cursed and floored the gas pedal. The tires screeched against the wet asphalt. "Buckle up."
Emma rolled down the window, rain whipping into her face, and fired. Once, twice. The second shot hit the SUV's tire. It spun out, skidding across the median and crashing into the guardrail. "Nice shot," Marlowe yelled. But the second SUV was still there, relentless. Then, out of nowhere, headlights appeared ahead, a semi-truck blocking the road sideways. "Hold on." Marlowe slammed the brakes. The car swerved violently, spinning out of control before crashing into a ditch. Airbags exploded. The world went white. For a long moment, there was nothing but the ringing in her ears and the taste of blood. Emma blinked, her vision blurring. The windshield was cracked, smoke curling from the engine. Marlowe wasn't moving. "Agent!" Emma coughed, shaking her. No response. A faint pulse, weak, but there. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by terror. The second SUV screeched to a halt on the road above them. Doors slammed. Shadows moved through the rain. Emma's instinct screamed, "Run!" She grabbed the flash drive from her pocket and crawled through the shattered passenger window, cutting her hand on the glass. Her shoes slipped in the mud as she scrambled up the embankment, away from the headlights. Voices shouted behind her. Flashlights cut through the rain. She ducked behind a fallen tree, heart hammering so loud she was sure they could hear it. One of the men's voices carried through the storm. "Check the car. Make sure the agent's dead. The girl's the priority. Kane wants her alive." Emma's breath caught. Kane. Even behind bars, his reach stretched this far. She pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the small drive like a heartbeat against her skin. Somewhere in the darkness, she could hear sirens again, faint, distant. But she didn't move toward them. She turned toward the forest instead, disappearing into the rain-soaked trees.